Hi, I'm in Phoenix. Well, actually I'm in Tempe. Same thing, it's all one giant mass anyway. And the weather is quite nice because it's January. Behind me is Culdesac, a neighborhood that is probably tired of being visited by nerdy urbanists, but it's important for being, by most definitions, the first car-free residential development in the United States. And right over there is a station on the Valley Metro light rail, which is one of the main reasons why this development will work so well. And these are just two of a few things that the United States could learn from the Phoenix metro area.
Part 1. Expand and never stop expanding. Now, the lengthy transformation of Phoenix from an enormous mass of suburban sprawl into an actually walkable and sustainable city begins with building out a functional and reliable mass transit system. The Valley Metro, Phoenix's light rail system, has been continuously expanding at a steady pace since its initial opening in 2008. The most recent of these expansions happened about 6 months ago when the Metro Parkway Transit Center opened on the second phase of the Northwest Extension. Sometime this year, the network will finally grow beyond a single line as the South Central Extension opens down to Baseline Road. By the 2030s, the light rail is planned to extend west to the state capital in the West Valley, as well as along an undetermined route to the northwest or northeast. Being from Denver, where the last time our rail network saw an expansion was almost 5 years ago, and there's currently no set date on any new projects, I'd say it was nice to visit a city where there's actual progress being made that isn't just a BRT. And speaking of it, I've seen many cases around the world where rail transit is criticized by transit opponents who say that BRT accomplishes the same thing as light rail for cheaper. Aside from how light rail is more cost-effective in the long term, I say think of it this way. The Valley Metro could have been a BRT, and it would not have been remotely as successful in attracting ridership as the light rail has been. The main reason for this is that the average person with no knowledge or enthusiasm for public transit is far more likely to take a train than a bus. If a road is put under construction for 6 years and all that comes after is a slightly faster bus than what was there previously, many will see it as a waste of the city's money. Light rail doesn't have this effect, and thus can be used as a tool to spur economic growth and transit-oriented development. I'm not saying buses are useless though. In fact, they're the backbone of any good network as feeder routes into the main rail lines. Both Phoenix and Denver have an excellent road layout for these kinds of bus routes, and another interesting thing in common is that they're the only two cities to have a bus route numbered 0. Back on the topic of light rail, the main goal Valley Metro needs to achieve is expanding the rail network on time, which has been a bit of a struggle. The South Extension was originally intended to open back in 2023, and hopefully this delay doesn't set a precedent of setbacks on rail projects. To put it in RTD terms, let's hope the West Valley Extension is like the A line, but if that's too hard, let's hope it's an N line and not a B line. On the other side of the city, there's not much reason to extend the light rail past Gilbert Road, because basically everything east of that is just RV parks that make for cool album covers and not much else. However, an extension running south to downtown Gilbert has a lot of potential. If I was in charge of transit planning in the Phoenix Metro, I'd propose the construction of a 55-mile-long suburban or regional rail line running from Happy Valley to Superstition Springs by passing through downtown and returning rail services to Phoenix's Union Station. The Valley Metro doesn't currently have any plans for a northwest to southeast running line, despite that being the overall shape of the metro area. Next, instead of looking into the future, let's look back into the past. About 100 years ago, the city of Phoenix had a network of streetcar lines, and while it wasn't as big as that of Denver's, this 3-line system had pretty good coverage, especially when considering that the entire population of Phoenix was less than 50,000 people at the time. But we all know how this story ends. The tramway was ripped up, and the next proposal to build a new rail network didn't come until the late 1980s with Valtrans. This was a plan that was way ahead of its time, proposing the construction of a 3- or 4-line elevated light metro system. One of the identified corridors here ended up becoming the Valley Metro as it's known today, albeit as a much slower and at-grade light rail. Imagine how much better the city would be today if the streetcar remained and the Valtrans was actually built. In other words, imagine if the auto industry didn't gut our cities and force people to own a car to go literally anywhere just so they could increase their profit margins. Though, unfortunately, we live in the bad timeline where none of this exists. The good thing, though, is that city planners in Phoenix seem to recognize the failures of the past and know the only way forward is to build good transit and slowly shift the city away from the failed car-centric development models of the late 20th century. Other cities should take note of Phoenix as living proof that there is no excuse to not build good transit. Part 2. Building around transit. Phoenix today is at the forefront of US cities when it comes to building out transit-oriented development. In my short trip to the city, I wasn't able to see a whole lot, but I did go out of my way to see Culdesac in person, and yeah, it's pretty cool. But having been to places like Mexico, Greece, and Liechtenstein for some reason, a residential area like Culdesac is not that special from a global perspective. Like, it seems like a regular batch of mixed-use housing. Overall, Culdesac's design is unconventional in the United States, but that doesn't make it unprecedented, and a lot of the coverage, both positive and negative, is treating this rather inconsiderable group of apartments as some exploratory test of an abnormal housing concept that we've never seen before, which it isn't. The real abnormal is places like these golf course subdivisions whose design is so terrible and environmentally inconsiderate that it's as if they're trying. Abnormal is the Texas donut apartment design that has been on the rise in recent years, or the mandatory ugly parking garage podium, where in both cases the cars seem to be given more room than the people that live there. Or how about these Hayden Square condos in Tempe? At first you think, oh wow, quaint pedestrian paths between the buildings, close proximity to light rail and the streetcar. Is this another cul-de-sac? Nope. The entire complex sits on top of a giant single-level parking lot. We are in the inferno. I do find it interesting that across all of the videos and articles I've seen about Culdesac, almost nobody has mentioned the light rail that picks up at the main square. Seems like an important thing to mention, like yeah, it's fairly obvious you can live without a car here because you can bike or take the train. Or instead you can get into this hip new thing called walking. But it's true that while some people would manage, it would be much harder to have a car-free residential area in a transit dead zone. So having an easily accessible light rail or frequent bus opens the ability to get places without needing a car. That's the whole purpose of public transportation. Culdesac will work because of its mixed-use design and transit accessibility. It shouldn't be thought of as an experiment. It isn't a test. This method works and should be replicated across North America. Back in Denver, there's an infamous giant field with a light rail station in the middle of it known as Lone Tree City. This 375-acre plot was intended to be a brand new mixed-use downtown for the city of Lone Tree, until the plans didn't go through. Now, this site has the ability to be developed in a truly unique way. Not including the small parking lot here, this is the full plot size of Culdesac, of which only 40% is currently built. And here is that same area overlaid onto Lone Tree City. Yeah, Lone Tree is big. Even if only the immediate area around the station is developed as a car-free zone, it will still be an area over 4 times larger than Culdesac. 4 times the map size of Culdesac. 16 times the detail.
All of this just works.
The now shuttered Metro Center Mall, which is home to the new northern terminus of the light rail, is also due to become a large transit-oriented development, and it looks promising aside from the fact that we're still building way too much parking. And I'm glad I got to see the Metro Center before it closed, because this new development will be much better for the community than yet another dead mall. And Phoenix is taking it one step further than individual redevelopment sites. In researching for this video, I came across a plan called Reinvent Phoenix, where the City Council contracted new urbanist pioneer DPZ Co-Design to envision and plan over 11 square miles of transit-oriented development along the central light rail corridors. This plan will essentially work to build the urban core that Phoenix greatly needs along an already existing transit line. Just like Denver, it may seem like a bad idea at first glance to have a train station with nothing around it, but these empty plots are actually perfect for the construction of high-density, transit-oriented housing with mixed-use ground floors. This is the kind of development that will solve the current housing affordability crisis, not Parkside Los Cielos Collection by Taylor Morrison. Wow. In this depiction of the 44th Street of the future, you can also see one of the many canals running through the city of Phoenix, which are the oldest piece of the city's infrastructure, as many of these canals were cemented centuries ago by the Hohokam people. Recently, major improvements to some of the canals have been made, adding dozens of miles of multi-use paths. Denver knows a thing or two about this, and both cities can attest to the success of these walking and biking trails connecting the city. I hope that in the near future, Phoenix puts in the effort to make these canal trails somewhat grade separated like those of Denver, so that people walking or biking don't have to cross a 6-lane strode every 100 meters or so. Both the light rail improvements and the new multi-use trails will open up more of the city to be accessible without a car. And the Reinvent Phoenix plan is a revolutionary model for how cities in North America can plan to build up instead of out, and that even the most sprawled cities are still capable of improving themselves. Part 3. The Other Train.
Welcome to Phoenix Sky Train.
Besides the light rail and the streetcar, there's one other rail service operating in the Phoenix Metro, and that's the SkyTrain at Sky Harbor International Airport. The SkyTrain is an automated people mover that shuttles people between terminals, transit stations, and the rental car center. It operates at all hours with as low as 5 minutes between trains and 9 minutes off-peak. Compared to the Valley Metro, which is not grade separated by the way, the SkyTrain is the most efficient little train in the city. And the SkyTrain is just one of several airport trains across the US, alongside those of LA, Atlanta, Dallas, and more. But the name SkyTrain is also used by Vancouver's world-renowned automated metro system that covers a whole city instead of an airport. Aside from the rubber tires on the Phoenix SkyTrain, there's quite a few similarities here. These airport people movers show that the United States is capable of building modern, elevated metro systems that are fully automated with 5-minute headways. But we choose to only do it at airports. Why can't our cities receive the same good transit that our airports have? Imagine an elevated light metro starting at the state capitol, heading east to the convention center, then north to the arts center and over to the Banner Medical Complex. But even with the existing SkyTrain, there's quite a bit of potential here. Due to the close proximity of Sky Harbor to downtown, the SkyTrain has the opportunity to be an actual transit service of more than just the airport. Let's keep the rental car fees going to finance an extension of the SkyTrain to the Sports District and Convention Center. How amazing would that be for people visiting from out of state to hop on the train and in 15 minutes be in downtown next to several major event centers and hotels? Though the main problem with this extension is that the rental car station would have to be rebuilt because it's a stub, and this is the perfect example of why planners should try to avoid building terminal stations like this, as it makes future expansions much harder. Denver is planning on building its own kind of SkyTrain to a new rental car center, and hopefully it can learn from the mistake of Phoenix and not build a train that can't be extended when the need arises. Part 4. I guess I should talk about the things I didn't like at this point. Despite all of the good things happening here, Phoenix is still in no way an urbanist paradise. I have to admit that I did not visit Arizona just to see cool places like Culdesac. No, I also had to go see some family in the irradiated wasteland known as North Scottsdale, a place with levels of suburban sprawl so extreme that the city's borders look like a before and after photo. Here's a photo I got from the plane, and wow, I never thought that everything I hate about American city planning could be captured in a single image, but here we are. I also have to talk about the Westgate complex in Glendale. Look at how stupid this is. No bus connections, the main arena is surrounded by a sea of parking, and there's only one pedestrian crossing that allows you to walk to the other points of interest here, and I have a feeling that nobody does. At least the sports district in downtown isn't a complete wasteland. There's a light rail connection, it's walkable, and there's at least a semi-intact urban grid. And it's not like this place isn't still highly car-oriented. Look at this parking garage. And while there is a healthy amount of development happening downtown, it seems like most of it is just Arizona State on its rise to imperial power over the masses. Almost every new building in the city has the ASU logo on it to the point where I'm starting to see it when I close my eyes. And maybe it's because winter isn't as busy as other times of the year. Maybe it's because the light rail was closed for construction on the day I visited. Maybe it's because there's very few things to actually do here. But downtown Phoenix was probably the most dead urban area I have ever seen in a US city. I have been to small Colorado towns of like 20 people that were more lively than the central core of the country's 5th largest city. Tempe, on the other hand, actually felt like a sort of downtown, despite technically being an urbanized suburb. Regardless, the biggest problem with Phoenix is that the city is still 95% suburban sprawl and will likely remain that way for a while. However, within this truth lies the greatest lesson to be learned here. Phoenix doesn't use its existing suburban density as an excuse to not build good transit. The city was completely different 100 years ago when it started on the path of car-centric sprawl. And while the best time to build a transit-oriented city was admittedly with Valtrans like 30 years ago, the next best time is right now. If we define the next 100 years as a time of fixing sprawl instead of adding more of it, building transit instead of removing it, there is no reason why all of the existing problems I've highlighted here will not dissipate over time. Seeing plans like Reinvent Phoenix gives me hope for the future of American cities, because sprawl is not forever. It is simply an outdated city planning standard that needs to be abandoned. And don't even get me started on the complete pandemonium the American suburban model has wrought upon this country and the environment. I'm not even going to go into depth about how detrimental this is on the climate, partly because I don't have enough time, but also because I'm honestly not very knowledgeable about the subject. Just go watch the Climate Town video on the suburbs, it's really good. From the beautiful landscapes to the warm and sunny weather to the largest university in the country that haunts my dreams and the ancient canals that long predate the very idea of cars, the valley deserves better than car dependency. And so does all of North America. The Phoenix Metro may not do everything perfectly, but it has done far more than anyone has ever expected it to. As such, it has set itself on the course of a more sustainable, more livable future for everyone. And that's all I have for today. My final suggestion to Phoenix is please don't wait until 2030 to extend the light rail to the West Valley. It will make a lot more sense to build the entire extension as one, and maybe in a few years I'll return to Phoenix and make an update video on how things are going. However, I won't do that if not enough has changed, so you better get on it or I might have to instead do a video about Phoenix's arch nemesis, Tucson. Woo!